We are back on Taking Care of Business on Koerner Radio, News Talk 1180, 1230 KGEO, 1410 KERI, and now in Albuquerque, New Mexico on 1000 KKIM. Our second guest today is one we've had the pleasure of having on the show before, and I absolutely love her writing. She wrote a book we talked about last time, The Last Boy, Story of Mickey Mantle, and today we're going to talk about another book she wrote, Sandy Koufax, A Lefty's Legacy. Jane, welcome to Taking Care of Business.
My pleasure. Good to talk to you finally.
I've been persistent the last year, haven't I, trying to get you back?
You certainly have been, and guilt precedes me wherever I go.
He calls it persistent. I have another name for him.
Wait a minute, we're on a family station. Yeah, I've been called shameless before. So, and you're a trooper. I appreciate you being here today because we know you're sick. We had to change the time around a little bit because you had to go to the doctor. So thank you for being a trooper and sticking with us through this.
My pleasure.
So, sort of. So before we talk about your two fantastic books, I want to talk to you a little bit about what's going on in the news lately, since you're a sports writer. Lance Armstrong, what do you think?
Well, I'm not surprised. Are you? I mean, I suppose the only surprising thing, and there certainly will be something that comes out about whether there's some deal or other for further testimony. It is. It's more evidence of how gullible people really can be. You know, you look at it and it's right in front of your eyes, and you don't want to believe it. You don't want to see what's right there, and so you deny it along with him. And I think it's the only thing that's stunning about the announcement is that it took so long, and that he was so unbelievably able to pull this off for so long.
Okay, now let me play the adversary role for a second here, okay? Now, and I'm a cyclist, so I have to admit I'm a little bit tainted here. The argument is, and it's the same argument that, baseball players are using, is that, hey, everybody uses it, so isn't that an equal playing field, basically, because everybody's doing drugs at one form or another? Well,
I mean, if they were to change the rules and say it's legal, go for it, do whatever you want to do, then you could argue that it's a legal playing field and an equal playing field and do what you want. But it certainly, until that point comes, and it hasn't yet, and I don't think it ever will, it's not an equal playing field. There are some poor schlubs who were, schlepping up those mountains without the benefit of any help, and that it would require that kind of elixir of drugs and human growth hormone and blood doping to do those kinds of feats hardly surprises me.
Okay.
Maybe we need to ratchet back our expectations then of how long it takes for people to complete such a feat.
Sure.
But until it's made legal, it's not a legal or equal playing field.
Okay, so I want to take this a step further. Okay, since your realm as far as sports is, baseball. Socia, McGuire, those guys were snubbed by the Hall of Fame last week. Should they ever be allowed into the Hall of Fame since their records are tainted because of their steroid use?
No, I don't think they should. The first thing you see when you walk in a professional locker room is not a naked human being. By the way, it's a sign that says that no betting is allowed. And it's the first and last commandment of competition, and as long as that is the case, and as long as using steroids and using enhancements and distorting the playing field is against the rules, then no, Pete Rose shouldn't be in the Hall of Fame, and no, the steroid people should not be in the Hall of Fame. And the problem is, of course, that some people who are not guilty are being swept up with those who are. But that's what happens when people don't actually tell the truth.
Sure. We're having a conversation with best-selling author and journalist Jane Leavy.
So what about those pedophiles that are in the in baseball, or the sex abusers, or the ones that have fraud in their life or bright bad checks? Should they all be disbarred from being in the Hall of Fame?
Well, how are we going to determine that? I mean, there are morals clauses, and then there's competition violating the expectation that what you see on the field is an honest portrayal of ability and competitiveness at a given moment, at a given time, under equal conditions.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry because I misconstrued that. I was thinking of Congress when I was talking about that.
Oops.
I was going to slide in.
I don't know how we're. Is human nature perfectible? I doubt it. Can we know who did what exactly, and the resumes, the shameful resumes, and personal activities of everyone that's been played in American pastime? Obviously not. But the credibility of the games depends on the ability of a paying customer to go to a game and believe that it is what you're seeing, and and absent a real change in rules, then no, you can't say that it was a level playing field and it's okay.
Mm-hmm. Now, you've written two fantastic books, Sandy Koufax, A Lefty's Legacy, and The Last Boy, Mickey Mantle. And I saw this question on your website, and I thought it was a pretty good question. What is the role of a biographer? I mean, what story should you be telling about these people?
Well, what I set out to do in each of those cases was very different. I mean, first of all, one guy's alive and one guy's dead. One guy was seemingly very well known. It has left a paper trail, that is long enough to circumscribe the entire globe. Everybody'd written about Mickey, and I was dubious, to be honest, that I was going to be able to come up with anything new enough to justify a new biography. So I had to be persuaded that was an endeavor worth doing. In Koufax's case, he had written is loosely is a word that loosely applied here. One autobiography with the late Ed Lynn, which was actually a pretty decent, ghosted autobiography. I don't think Sandy ever read it, or read it maybe once after it was written. And there had been one other biography of him. So that was more of an open playing field. In Mickey's case, I felt that there was an obligation on my part to try to give him back his humanity. Some of these people become so big, so much bigger than life, so much of a caricature, that their humanity gets lost. You don't really know who they were or what were the things that caused them to act, in his case, as self-destructively as he did, and to overcome, to the extent that he could, the demons that he inherited in his DNA, by which I mean the alcoholism. So I really felt it was not to knock him down to size, but to make him human again. In Sandy's case, so little was known about him that it was to try to give a sense, again, of the dimensions of his humanity. This guy is, I think I wrote this to you, an uber mensch. And for those who don't know what the word mensch means, in Yiddish, it's the ultimate compliment. It's the best thing you can say about anybody. And the literal translation means sort of a whole person. And that doesn't really capture what the compliment means. It's more than a good guy. It's more than a hail fellow, well met. It's an encompassing word that is defined by who Sandy Koufax really is.
Right. And when we come back, let's talk a little bit more about that book, okay?
Sure.
We'll be back in a moment on Taking Care of Business on Koerner Radio News Talk 1180.